Chapter 1 Snow.
Marinette pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders as the cold night air stung her nose and cheeks. The Weather Bureau was predicting a particularly cold Christmas this year. Overhead, the Christmas fairy lights she had strung across her balcony twinkled against the gloomy gray skies. It had been an emotional roller coaster for the last few weeks. Gabriel Agreste, a man she had once admired and looked up to, turned out to be the villain Shadow Moth. That shock was only compounded when she then discovered that Adrien, the boy she had secretly had a crush on for years, was also her partner Cat Noir. She looked up at the clouded sky and let out a sigh. Adrien had been keeping to himself for the most part since the fallout, trying to deal with the effects of his father's exposure. Natalie, who they found out had been Mayra years ago, had also been arrested as an accomplice to his father's crimes. And Adrien had sent his bodyguard away on a long-deserved holiday break, meaning there was no one else in the mansion. Marinette was concerned about Adrien being all alone, especially for the holidays. She had left him a few messages to check on him and invite him out with their friends. But his responses had been vague and evasive, so she thought maybe it was best to let him have some space. Now, she wasn't sure that had been the right thing to do. It wasn't like Adrien at all to be closed off. Even Nino hadn't heard from him in over a fortnight, not since his mother's funeral. And with him getting the last few weeks of the term off, he hadn't been to school either, and she was getting worried. Maybe I should just go over and check on Adrien, Marinette said to her Kwame, who was huddled in the blankets with her. I know in his last text he said he was fine, but I'm not sure if I believe that.
You know Adrien was always one to put on a brave face for everyone,
Tiki said, and Marinette knew it to be true. But she felt that there might have been more to it than that. Marinette shrugged and shook her head. Maybe it's me he's avoiding. I'm not sure he was all that happy to find out I was Ladybug. It certainly hadn't been the way she had wanted to reveal their identities, in the thick of battle against Shadow Moth. It had been a shock for both of them, and they hadn't had much of a chance to process it. Tiki left the warmth of the blanket so she could look her chosen in the eyes.
Now, Marinette, you know that's not true. Adrien was dealing with a lot of information all at once, most of it not good. I think the fact that Ladybug was already someone he felt close to was a great comfort to him. Speaking of Adrien,
Tiki pointed out to the horizon where Cat Noir was leaping across the rooftops, his hair in a low ponytail flying behind him in the wild wind. Marinette watched as he disappeared into the distance. She had a pretty good idea where he was going.
You should go after him,
Tiki said, echoing Marinette's own thoughts. Maybe he just wants to be alone, Marinette replied. But Tiki shook her head.
He needs you, Marinette,
Tiki insisted. Marinette looked back out to the horizon. No one should be alone for Christmas. And what kind of a partner would she be if she left the person she cared most about in the world to be alone at this time of the year? Cat sat with his arm resting on his knee, his tail curled around himself high up on the rooftop opposite of the Eiffel Tower. He didn't care that it was cold. It was still better than being in the empty mansion with all its ghosts and memories. Here he was happy, in one of his favorite places where they always came to. Thoughts of his lady warm in her house, the smell of cookies and cinnamon all around her gave him comfort. Now she didn't have to spend her nights out in the cold looking for a shadow. At 18, Adrien didn't have to have a guardian or be answerable to anyone anymore. There was no more modeling and no more schedules. But with only one semester of lycée left, he did need to start making decisions about his future. His Aunt Amelie had offered for him to come live with her and Felix in London for the final semester of school, but he didn't want to leave his friends behind before the end of the lycée, one friend most of all. Adrien felt bad that he hadn't spoken more to Marinette lately, but in many ways he was too stricken with guilt. Guilt that it had been his own father that had been after them all these years. Guilt that he hadn't figured out sooner. She deserved better than that. She deserved better than him. So caught up in his own thoughts, Cat hadn't noticed Ladybug landing behind him, the sounds of her footsteps swept away by the wind which had picked up again. Cat, she said quietly, not wishing to startle him. Cat's attuned cat ears flickered and he turned his head at the sound of his name. Ladybug could see from the moisture on his face that he had been crying. Kitty, why are you out here in the wind and cold? She walked over and sat beside him, looking out towards the Eiffel Tower. Cat looked down into his lap, a heavy sigh leaving his lips. It's a little depressing in the mansion on my own, but with the holidays approaching, I can't see myself getting into an apartment anytime soon. Not at least until January.
What about Nino? I'm sure he would be happy to have you at his house.
Kat shook his head. I know he wants to spend time with Alia during the holidays. After everything that went down, they deserve to have a little time together. I don't want to be some kind of third wheel that everyone pities. Ladybug looked down over the city below and wondered if people would ever understand how much was sacrificed to keep them safe. All the heroes played a part in the end. But it was Kat, Adrien, who paid the highest price of all. He didn't deserve any of this, and she was determined that he would know how important he was to her, that he was loved for who he was. Then come stay with me, she said with a bright smile. You know my parents love you and you would be more than welcome. Kat looked at her amazed. You really want me to spend Christmas with you? I wouldn't want to be a burden to you all. I mean, I am the son of the villain of Paris. He got up and started to walk away from her. Ladybug quickly got up to follow him. Adrien, she said gently, clasping his hand to stop him from leaving. You are not your father, and you know my parents have always been fond of you. You are safe with us. Safe. That was something he hadn't felt in some time. Sure, most of Paris sympathized with the now former model over who his father was, and he was publicly exonerated of any involvement. But that didn't mean there hadn't been times he had looked over his shoulder, where he felt he was being silently judged. I don't want to intrude on your family, he said with his back still to her. You are my partner, Kitty, Ladybug implored. That makes you family to me. It's only a few days until Christmas. Please, don't spend it alone. Chad could feel himself becoming emotional at her words. Turning to face her, he picked up her hand in both of his and kissed the back of it. I don't deserve to have a friend like you, Marinette. Your friendship has been the most important of my life. Ladybug gently touched a hand to his cheek, a tear in her eye and a smile on her lips. You'll always have it, she said. Chad pulled her into a tight hug, holding her like a lifeline to him as the first snow started to slowly fall. Look, Kitty, it's snowing, Ladybug said, moving back slightly so he could see. Chad still kept his hands on her hips. It's a good omen. You're a good omen, he replied, making her blush under her mask. He smiled then, the first real genuine smile she had seen in weeks. Chet then turned his face up to the sky and tried to catch a snowflake on his tongue. Ladybug giggled at his antics. There was her silly kitty she loved. In the distance, the town clock chimed 11 o'clock, and Chet looked back at his lady. I should get you home. It's getting late. Ladybug nodded, and the two of them made their way to the bakery. Landing on her balcony, Ladybug took both of his hands in hers. Now, you come bright and early tomorrow morning. I don't want you in that house a minute longer than you need to be. Be warned, though. Papa will most likely put an apron on you and set you to work. I can't wait, he replied. Chat leaned down and softly kissed her cheek. See you tomorrow, my lady. Marinette dropped her transformation as she watched Chat disappear over the horizon, her heart beating fast in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she might finally be able to tell him how she really feels.
End of chapter 1.